I think only Reyes should be allowed to sing that song. Well, we're in for another treat. Our guest speaker is one of our own. He came here as an intern a couple of years ago. 6, I do believe it was. All ready to go and ready to do what was his to do. And during that internship, he became the spiritual leader at what was then called Wynwood Unity. He studied and became a licensed Unity teacher. And then he jumped into the International Ministerial Program at Unity School, Unity National School, Pacific Rim, became a licensed Unity minister. And then on Friday, he completed the IMP. And is now the senior minister at what is called Unity Wynwood. Would you please welcome one of our own and my dear friend, Reverend Gio Downer.
Cool. I got a standing ovation just walking up here. I accept. You know, that's one of the spiritual practices that I've learned in Unity. To accept the good. You know, many times in our lives we get a compliment or we hear something that's wonderful about ourselves and we say, I didn't do that. But it's more important that we accept the good, I believe. That is one of the many spiritual practices that can make a difference in my life, in our lives. It is very good to be here because you see, that door right over there is very significant in my life. On the first Sunday of August in 2010, I walked into that door unaware of what was ahead of me, but knowing without a doubt that I was completely in the right place, at the right time, right then. I know that you are in the right place at the right time, right now. And sometime later today when that person cuts in front of you in traffic or they have 15 items in the 10-item aisle, you will be in the right place at the right time, right then, too. Because you see, we not only have a physical journey that all of us seem to be able to perceive. We seem to be able to see this physical journey that's all around us. There's also a spiritual journey that we are embarking upon on a daily basis as well. Today I'd like to share with you and speak with you about the process and the practice of forgiveness. Unity is a positive path for spiritual living. And in this positive path, we consider all the many pathways to God, as Reverend Levitt said earlier, especially the path that you are on. And each of us is on a spiritual path, but sometimes we don't necessarily see the wholeness of it. Because you see, sometimes in our lives, they really shouldn't have done that. Don't they know what I'm trying to do? There's always those circumstances or situations where we get an opportunity for forgiveness. All those opportunities for forgiveness are something that we can do on the material plane, and they're also something that we can do on a higher spiritual level as well. All these many pathways to God, and all the many recommendations and suggestions by so many spiritual teachers throughout the centuries. The master teacher, Jesus, when asked by the apostle Peter, Lord, how many times should we forgive? 7? Jesus replied, no, 7 times 70. I can only imagine that Simon Peter was standing there thinking, okay, I have to forgive and I have to do math too. It's a bit more than simply the math. It's a bit more than knowing that forgiveness is a practice that we use in our lives. It's one of the many spiritual practices that we talk about here in this spiritual community. And one of the things that move us into a greater idea, a greater expression of everything that we can be. A lot has happened for me in these last 6 years. There have been many unexpected turns. There have been many opportunities for forgiveness. Yet through it all, I recognize on a daily basis that God is expressing in me, through me, and as me. And what I get to do as a minister is invite all of you to see that too, no matter who I come into contact. I know that that's not only the thing that is mine to do. I know for a fact that's for all of us to do. Unity is an empowering spiritual path. We recognize the presence and power of God in every individual. This morning, I would like to acknowledge the power of God in persistence and strength and fortitude on behalf of the staff and also the board of trustees of this spiritual community. Let's give them a hand. There are so many things that happen in our lives and in our world, and there are many things that happen in our spiritual communities too. And in that, there is always the perspective, the viewpoint that people are working toward a higher ideal. That there will be this space and this place in which we can step into a greater idea of the empowerment that's within us. I'd like to honor the people who are willing to do what is necessary on a daily basis in order to make certain that this spiritual community stays strong. That this spiritual community is here for not only you, but for many others yet to come. Because you see, this positive path to spirituality recognizes not only the teachings of Jesus, but also the teachings of many of the other spiritual masters throughout the centuries. There's one particular modern spiritual master who's made a significant difference in my life, and that is the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama once wrote, "All major religious traditions carry basically the same message. That is love, compassion, and forgiveness. They should be a part of our daily lives." In our material experience, and when people have done something wrong, then it's probably necessary for us to excuse them, right? That's what I'm teaching, or what spiritual teachers throughout the centuries have taught. Forgiveness is about allowing for mistakes, allowing for the human condition. But there's a higher and greater experience. It's more than simply allowing for an excuse. It's actually engaging in a spiritual practice that creates a new viewpoint, creates a new idea, creates a new world. This practice and action of forgiveness is the very thing that moves us into a greater experience of life itself. And it's not something that's exclusive to Buddhism or Christianity. You see, when I first moved to Hawaii, there were a lot of strange words that I didn't really necessarily recognize. Of course, I knew about aloha, but there was another word that was rather odd to me that I didn't quite get when I first heard it, and that word is ho'oponopono. It even sounds a little strange. But as I learned what the actual meaning was, I recognized the words actually have that vibration. I could feel ho'oponopono. That making right is the practice of forgiveness. This practice was handed down generation after generation amongst the Hawaiian people in what they understood and knew as ohana, their family. This spiritual family can benefit so greatly from making right, from living in ho'oponopono. This actual practice is compiled in the words, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you." This is a mantra that could be stated by any of us in order to move into a new idea. And it's so much more than simply excusing a wrong. It's a way that we can change the vibration of our lives. You see, this practice of ho'oponopono is an inside job. Last week, Reverend Levitt spoke to reconciliation. He spoke to how this is a necessity of an inside job. This practice of forgiveness is also an inside job. And the co-founder of the Unity movement, Charles Fillmore, knew that when he once wrote, "Forgiveness really means the giving up of something. When you forgive yourself, you cease doing the thing you ought not to do." When we truly love ourselves, when we truly forgive ourselves, then we have no need to seek for comfort outside of us. We recognize the comfort and the completion is within us. That practice of forgiveness for ourselves begins the practice of forgiveness in our life and in our world. I believe it's all a matter of our perspective. It's not just the manner in which we see with our outer eyes, but the manner in which we see with our inner eye. This is demonstrated by one of the disciplines known as Gestalt. Some of you are quite familiar with Gestalt, and that, of course, you can see quite easily that there are 2 triangles and 3 circles there, right? Or are there 3 Pac-Men and a bunch of weird little squiggly lines? I believe it's both 2 triangles and 3 circles, 3 Pac-Men and some weird squiggly lines. It's both of those. It's the manner in which we can see the whole perspective, how we can view what's happening within us internally, and also how we can view what's happening with someone else. That practice of forgiveness is the manner in which we can see things anew, how we can awaken into the light that's within us in order to shine a light in our world, in our relationships, how we can make right right and live a spiritual practice of forgiveness. You see, this spiritual practice can awaken your eyes to be fully aware that that's definitely a vase, isn't it? Or is it a profile facing a profile? It's both and. So much in our lives and so much in our world that causes so much discord and difficulty is the idea of either this or that. It must be this or that. And what I believe Jesus was pointing to, not only to the math of 7 times 70, but pointing to the practice and the principle of forgiveness as a daily way of seeing the wholeness of every experience, of seeing the allness of our life. How do you fill in the holes? In what way do you see 2 triangles and 3 circles? Or in what way do you perceive it in a different way? And more importantly, how can we as spiritual practitioners, those of us who are truth seekers and truth finders, how can we truly see the allness of life? As we fill in the holes, we can see things in a more full and absolute way. One of the modern teachers who has made a significant difference in my life, and perhaps yours as well, is Dr. Wayne Dyer. He once wrote, "If you change the way you look at things, things you look at change." This practice of forgiveness is a manner in which we can actually miraculously change our lives, but also miraculously change the past. This idea of the miracle of forgiveness is something that has a practical application and is so much more than the spiritual teachers who say you should use this practice of forgiveness. As a minister, I oftentimes thought that it was important that I not let people know that there's something that bristles inside of me whenever anyone says should. I thought for a time that I should maybe keep that secret. And what I got to discover was that that idea of should was not something that I was the only one that bristled at that. There are a number of people who have a bit of difficulty with that. The more important aspect of this idea of forgiveness is that this practice fulfills our lives. It gives us a wholeness and a fullness that I believe that Jesus was speaking to when he said, "I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly." This abundant life is the manner in which we can live in the practice of forgiveness. This practice of understanding the wholeness of everything that we live in. The perspective and the viewpoint that we gain from living a practice of forgiveness is what I believe Marianne Williamson was speaking to when she once wrote, "A miracle is a shift in perception from fear to love." Which would you choose today? Would you choose fear or would you choose love? In the unity movement, we recognize that hell is a state of consciousness. Heaven is a state of consciousness. Which would you choose today? Hell or heaven? Fear or love? You see, the interesting and sometimes confusing aspect of this choice between heaven and hell is our willingness to see the whole of it. To actually see the hell that we could create and choose not to live in, or the heaven that we do also create in alignment with God's principles, the heaven that we can live in, the allness and the wholeness of life that we can step in and know and experience in truth. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was also speaking to this when he said, "Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude." It's a way in which we can show up in our lives in an attitude of forgiveness, rather than simply someone who doles out excuses. We can truly be in that consciousness and awareness of 7 times 70. This attitude and idea is something I'd like to invite you to commit to this morning. I'd invite you that in all aspects of your life, in your spiritual community, at the grocery store when they have 15 items instead of 10, or in traffic when someone truly needs to get in and they do, I'd invite you to affirm, to proclaim the possibility that not only in this day there's an option and a practice of forgiveness, but in every day. Let's proclaim this affirmation out loud together. Today is a day of forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive others. This is an awareness and a consciousness that we can go forth in our lives in order to experience, in order to live in. This morning I'd like to share with you a story that was recently shared with me about an officer on the New York Police Department by a man by the name of Stephen Mcdonald. On July the 12th of 1986, Stephen was assigned to Central Park because there had been a number of bicycle robberies and also quite a bit of gang activity in the park. Stephen was going to the park with his superior officer in order to see what was going on and how they might be of assistance. As he approached a group of young men who were gathered around a bicycle, one of the young men turned around and shot Stephen directly in the neck. He says that the only thing that he remembered in the hospital when he was reliving the experience was a blinding flash of orange light. Stephen was immediately rushed to the hospital, and his superior officer went with him. Over the course of the next 18 months, he was in rehabilitation, not only in New York City, but also in Denver, Colorado. He had to learn how to eat again. He had to learn how to allow people to help, to bathe him. In an instant, his life changed from being an active police officer to someone who had a disability. The young man who shot him was pretty much immediately arrested and taken to jail. 6 months after this incident in the park, Stephen and his wife had a son. The birth of the son Connor made Stephen decide to live and to live differently. He decided that he wanted to live in a state of forgiveness. He sent numerous letters to the man who committed this heinous act in prison. Shaved received letter after letter after letter, and Stephen didn't receive a response for many months, until finally Shaved began to write back. After their continual correspondence, they both reached a place of Stephen's and Shaved's forgiveness. You see, what Stephen became aware of is that Shaved didn't see a man who had a wife and the potential of a son, didn't see a human being. He saw a badge that represented the injustice that was perpetrated on himself, his friends, his neighbors. He saw a man who would come and oversee a situation and then walk away. As a result of this forgiveness, both Stephen and Shaved had a new perspective on the situation, on life itself. Upon his release, 3 days after getting out of prison, Shaved was killed in a motorcycle accident. But the letters and correspondence between them was proof and evidence of the forgiveness that had taken place. To this very day, Stephen Mcdonald tours high schools, hospitals, gives public addresses about the power and the difference of forgiveness, not only in his life, but in the life of his family, of his wife, of his son, of his friends, of Shaved. I'd like to read to you something that Stephen wrote. I forgave Shaved because I believe that the only thing worse than receiving a bullet in my spine would have been to nurture revenge in my heart. Such an attitude would have extended my injury to my soul, hurting my wife, son, and others even more. It's bad enough that the physical effects are permanent, but at least I can choose to prevent spiritual injury. Again, I have my ups and my downs. Some days when I am not feeling very well, I can get angry. I get depressed. There have been times when I even felt like killing myself. Of course, I didn't forgive Shaved right away. It took time. Things have evolved over 14 years. I think about it almost every day. But I can say this, I've never regretted forgiving him. This man is a demonstration of the power and the miracle of forgiveness, of how much difference it made in his life. How much difference can we make in our lives when we make a decision to live in that power of forgiveness? To truly live just the tiniest slights compared to what Stephen has experienced. How much power and difference can you make in your life with the empowerment of forgiveness as a miraculous practice on a daily basis? This miraculous practice is something that we teach in Unity, something that we share about a miraculous experience and a way of life. A good friend of mine and also a Unity minister who lives here in the islands of Hawaii is named Reverend Joan Gattuso. She's recently written a book entitled The Power of Forgiveness. In this book, Joan Gattuso writes, "Your unloving thoughts are keeping you in a hell of your own making. It is forgiveness that lifts you out of your self-made hell and guides you into the light." Might we all consider a way that we can guide ourselves and one another into the light? Might we recognize that our unforgiving thoughts are creating a hell for ourselves and quite possibly a hell for others? This can make a difference in our own individual lives and the lives with the people we come into contact. It can also make a difference in our world. Marianne Williamson speaks to this when she says the practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world. I believe that to be true. That is, as our individual hearts extend to other hearts in this world, we impact and create a difference for one another. Another local Hawaii author is a man by the name of Gerald Dompolsky. He writes, "Forgiveness is letting go of the past and is therefore the means for correcting our misperceptions." In what way are you filling in the blanks? Are you perceiving the 2 triangles and 3 circles? In what way can I experience the wholeness of life and shift my perceptions? In what way might we live in the question and know indeed that we can choose fear or choose love? I invite you once more to affirm with me the infinite potential and the power that is within you, that you might change this world and change your life. Let's proclaim it out loud together. Today is a day of forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive others. Thank you for being the truth in this world, for being the truth in your life, and for knowing the miracle and power of forgiveness. Aloha.